In this lesson, we're going to be talking about detection of malware. The first thing that we want to do is talk about a couple of different ways to do malware detection. And you'll find that whether we're talking about intrusion detection or antivirus programs, you'll find that there are commonly a couple of different ways to do this. The first is called anomaly-based. Now, anomaly-based has to do with figuring out what's normal on either a system or a network, and then alerting based on anything that deviates from that normal behavior. With anomaly-based, you have to have a baseline that you can check against when you see anything happening, and anything that deviates from that baseline would be considered anomalous, and therefore you would alert on it. The other type is signature-based, and it's the one that's more commonly used. Signature-based, of course, is based on a number of signatures. So you take, for example, a virus, and you develop a signature of that virus based on what the file looks like, what its characteristics are. You check any program that runs or file that comes in against those signatures and determine whether you've got a piece of malware on your hands or not. Everybody, I think, is pretty familiar with antivirus programs, and we'll talk about one of them here, although there are several. Now, Microsoft used to have this program called Windows Defender, and they've since changed that into this Microsoft Security Essentials. It's a free program, and it not only is antivirus, it checks for other types of malware as well. There are versions of malware that attack Linux. There are versions of malware that attack Mac OS. In terms of Linux and Mac OS, you'll find that ClamAV is a free and open source antivirus solution that will run on both of them. Another way of doing detection of malware is using something called intrusion detection. Now, intrusion detection can be either host-based or network-based. When we're talking about host-based, we could be talking about programs that check the signatures of files. So you might run an MD5 hash against all of the critical files on your system and all of the system programs, and you would create a database of all of those. You could check against that database periodically to see whether anything has changed. If something has changed, then you may very well have a piece of malware on your hands. So that's a version of host-based intrusion detection. And I'm going to take a look here at a network-based intrusion detection system. This one is actually called Snort, although the interface that I'm looking at is Basic Analysis and Security Engine, or BASE, and Snort runs primarily on Unix-based systems. There are some fairly complicated rules that go along with Snort. You kind of have to know a little bit about some network filtering syntax to be able to write Snort rules. You can see these rule sets in this directory. These are all of the rules that are on this system. So I could take a look at backdoor rules. For example, the one at the top says alert on a TCP packet, any external network, and the source is any, and the destination is the home network, and these variables that have the $sign in front of them are defined in a configuration file. And there's a lot of other details here about flow bits and offset and some other stuff. You have to know a fair bit about what the packet looks like in order to write these rules for this. The backdoor rules has about 119 rules in it. Each of these files is going to have several or several dozen rules in them. And again, these are signatures, so you could see that signature is based on what the packet looks like. So for example, source or destination, IP address or port, and some other information. And that would be the signature that the rules are based on. So we can go back to base now that we've taken a quick look at Snort, and you can see the different alerts that have popped up from Snort. I'm going to take a look at the unique ones. You can see there's a shellcode alert, And shellcode could be something to do with a piece of malware. It could suggest that somebody has tried to break into a program, so there may be some malicious behavior or malicious intent with that one. Now, another way of doing malware detection is to look at web connections. A lot of malware comes through web requests and interactions with web servers. One way you can detect malware is using a proxy, and you would use a proxy that you were able to inject some sort of malware detection engine into the middle of, or that the proxy had that malware detection engine built into it. And here's a pretty common proxy server that does that sort of detection. It's Bluecoat, and you can see the different products they have here. The Bluecoat proxies have the ability to filter different websites, and they can also check for different pieces of malware to see whether they are coming through or not. So that's how you would do detection of malware, whether you're doing network-based or host-based.